Welcome to What the Decks, where, over the course of a lunch hour, we take the idea for a deck build from Lunchbox to Deckbox. I'm your host, Skylar, and today we're going to try something a little different. So today is what I've started to establish as kind of week B in cadence. So week A is when we're going to do a fresh build from the ground up, whereas week B, so every other week, we're going to explore deck building in a different way. And it's a very experimental slot right now. So far, this is the second week of week B. And so the first time we did this, we did a deck deconstruction. So that was taking a list that I had built, and it doesn't necessarily need to be one that I built in the future, but taking a list that felt complete and like pulling or deconstructing that deck, working backwards. Why does this deck work? And like why were the elements chosen in that deck? One of the things I wanted to experiment with, I was kind of considering as like a deck critique session or like a deck doctor section, because I really like alliteration. So far, in week B, we would have deck deconstruction and deck doctor. And that's what we're going to explore this week. So how this kind of came out about on where I landed for a deck to look at this week is a local and friend of mine, Oliver. He reached out with a list, and I hadn't gotten a chance to look at it yet. Just DM'd me, food for thought. And so I asked him last night, I was like, hey, I've had this idea where I actually take a look at a list I've never seen before on stream and try to establish what I think it's doing, what I think its strengths are, what I like about the deck, what I would swap, like how I would change the deck. And he loved the idea. So he said to go ahead and use the Rimelocked Relics Skinnerkin list that he'd sent my way for my first crack at this. So that's what we're going to be tackling today. And because we're tackling the Skinnerkin, I actually want to take a moment to say that kind of like a not safe for work warning, or like a parental guidance warning. So the Skinnerkin are easily the most gory warband in art that we've seen to date. So if you're a bit squeamish, keep that in mind. If you're a younger viewer, I would actually ask, to think to yourself, is this something that your parents would want you taking a look at? Maybe even reach out to your parents real quick and show them this little clip and say hey, is it okay if I watch this episode? So, and to that end, what makes Skinnerkin so gory is they think they're chefs. They think they are preparing the most gourmet meals in the kingdom for their lordship. Unfortunately, they're totally diluted, and so their ingredients are very suspect. In fact, their ingredients are characters from the world instead of what you would normally prepare a meal with. All right, getting that out of the way, let's dive in. So for those who were looking forward to a field report for Skate's Wild Hunt plus Rimelocked Relics, we called that deck the Chillblain Hunt. Last week, that's when we built that. That will be coming. That will be a part of the Week A cadence. We'll start every Week A episode with a field report covering the last deck that was built, and then we will build a new one together. So, but if I could tease you a little bit, I've played 3 games with that deck so far. I am 3 for 3, and I am loving it. But I have plenty to discuss regarding that. For example, I think I've had extremely favorable matchups. So this week I'm going to try to give myself some unfavorable matchups and see if I can still hold that 100% record so far with Chillblain Hunt. And I'm curious to hear how testing is going for you if you decide to give it a crack. All right, without further ado, let's do our first ever Deck Doctor build. So I have loaded Oliver's list in here. So anytime you load somebody else's list into Underworlds DB, it's not going to come up as editable and it's just essentially like a read-only mode. So to like edit that, you can save a copy. There will be a button up here, save a copy of this list, and then you just go into Deck Editor and you'll load the list, right? So right here we have Oliver, our Skinnerkin, and one of the things that we're going to be doing today, we're going to throw a name out there. We're still going to end the episode with a good name, and we'll see if Oliver likes it. We'll report back from there. So today we're going to kick off taking a look at, so it's kind of cool that we're doing Rimelocked here because we did, cover Rimelocked last week. So we have kind of that momentum of knowledge. We can use what we were discussing last week. We can use what I've learned through my playthroughs with the Chilblain Hunt in the meantime as helpful pieces of the puzzle to establish like what we think about these choices in here. Skinnerkin, though, is extremely unfamiliar to me outside of kind of like cursory view overs where I've kind of like read through their cards but not really retained it, haven't played as them yet, played against them once, so limited knowledge there. So let's see if we can't get this picture to come into focus. All right, and it's a fun way to get Skinnerkin kind of in the mix too. Like I didn't know if and when I'd be able to get Skinnerkin in here, but it is a new release and it is exciting. So why not show you what you might be able to accomplish with the new Wintermaw box plus Rimelocked Relics. So let's go ahead and just load in our pairing right away so we don't have to do that later. Filters, Skinnerkin, and we're going to want to see Rimelocked as well. There we go, 64, good. And no spells, no wizards. Let's take a look at their fighter cards. So right at the gate, we have one defense dice that stands out to me. One dodge defense dice on most fighters, so they're going to be pretty moved. They're not going to be able to guard damage often, and even if they do, they're probably tying and probably or crit defending, right? Like that's really their only saving grace. But a lot of the time, they're going to take that tie and get pushed off of their position. So when they inspire, does that picture get much better? It does over here, but not really elsewhere. Oh my gosh. I was like, please tell me I unmuted my mic. My heart sank for a second there. I did. We're good. You can hear me. This is you hearing me. Hey, Oliver. So I'm glad you could show up for your Deck Doctor review. I'm really excited to tackle this. Well, like right out of the gate too, I see we've got 12 gambits and 12 upgrades. And so one of the goals is going to be figuring out what we would suggest as things to whittle out of those lists, because I'm a firm believer in 12, 10, and 10. But I know that this list was built with like playtesting in mind. And so this is a playtesting strategy. Hey, if you don't really know what you're going to want to cut, it's okay to bring a couple extra cards, see what happens when they come up. I like to try to keep it down to 11-11 when I go that strat, because this is 4 extra cards in a 20 card deck. So that's just a high percentage of variance from game to game. But it is a nice way to like evaluate cards, to be able to like actually see them come up and go, ooh, you know what? This one's the cut. I don't actually anticipate this one doing much for me in future matchups, and I would have preferred it had been almost any other card. So that'll be one thing for sure, is we're going to figure out what our recommended cuts are from the Gambits and Upgrades section. And circling back to their fighter cards here. So Cedric and Karnskir are going to be our most unmovable fighters once we get them inspired, but unfortunately Karnskir is a beast, so not going to be able to help with any sort of objective holding, which I know Rimelocked likes to pack in. So let's see how much of that was brought. And then we've got various different ways to acquire haunch counters, both on their uninspired and inspired side. I don't believe any of that changes. No. So what they have available to them for haunch collecting maintains across both sides of their cards, and they need 3 haunch counters to inspire. Until then, they're fairly accurate. 3 dice looking for swords is what I would consider to be an accurate profile. 2 hammers is often kind of the compared equivalent, with 3 swords actually edging it out just marginally because of the chance for crits across 3 dice instead of 2. But they don't really do much damage until they get inspired. And even then, our damage is kind of limited to our fighters that are easier to move. And then we've got scything over here on Cedric bumping up as well. So that's good. That's really good. Okay, enough on the fighters. So taking a look at the objectives. First, let's take a look at how many items in here are looking for Rimelocked upgrades and how many Rimelocked upgrades we have. That'll start building a deck cohesion picture for us. So we have Frostbitten Strike, enemy fighters taken out of action. Your warband holds 1 or more objectives. So that one is not Rimelocked dependent. I'm actually going to breeze through instead of reading each one. Let's do, let's read. So Glacial Dominion. Score this immediately after an opponent's activation step if 1 or more friendly fighters holding an objective has 1 or more Rimelocked upgrades. So we have a need for 1 right here. This doesn't need to be flipped. So that's really nice. You get really good flexibility. As soon as you have a Seed Glory, it can start contributing to Glacial Dominion. You don't have to wait for the thawing. Icy Grip. Your warband holds 2 or more objectives, and 1 or more of those objectives are in no one's or enemy territory. The big thing here is keep in mind, score this immediately after an opponent's activation step. So we're going to circle back to this. I think this is going to be rather hard for them because of that opponent's step piece. So we might be looking for a swap there. The Skinnerkin stuff isn't going to have Rimelocked, so we're going to skip those for now. A Line in the Snow. Score this in an end phase if 1 or more enemy fighters are out of action and 2 or more friendly fighters are in no one's and or enemy territory. 1 or more enemy fighters are out and 2. Okay, perfect. So this kind of pulls us towards invading a bit, as does Icy Grip. Icebound Defenders. Your warband holds 2 or more objectives, and your warband holds each objective in 1 or more territories. I'm going to bet that our best bet here is going to be to make sure that there's only 1 in no one's territory, and make that the one that we hold towards this. Steaming Corpses. 1 or more friendly fighters and 1 or more enemy fighters are each out of action, and 1 or more of those fighters each have 1 or more face down Rimelocked relic or Rimelocked upgrades. Okay, cool. So that's our second thing calling for Rimelocked. So not much so far calling for Rimelocked. And Wintry Conquest. Your warband holds 3 or more objectives, and 1 or more friendly fighters holding an objective each have 1 or more Rimelocked upgrades. So we have a third thing looking for Rimelocked here. Okay. This is a good 3-point goal, but it might be really hard for us to achieve. I think we're gonna have some fun dissecting like if our objectives are pulling us in 2 different directions. So then over here we're just gonna look. So we've got Frostgale Rimelocked, Gelid Cyclone Rimelocked, Layfrost Rimelocked. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, because raw power as well. I skipped raw power for a second there. Rimewearing Skin Boots and the Snowblind Cloak. So we've got 4 Rimelocked pieces with 3 upgrades calling for them. I think that's probably a fair call. I'd like no less than 4 in that scenario. So and then we have some different tools over here to help control when things thaw. So as well as, do we have Frozen Solid? Okay, good. So if you run Steaming Corpses, then you should always run Frozen Solid, I think. And I think this is probably one of the best Rimelocked upgrades in here, or Rimelocked objectives in here right now, because of the fact that our fighters are fragile. And so when a fighter of ours goes down, if they have at least, if we think they're going to go down, you can slip them an upgrade, and then either A, they go down and it helps you score Steaming Corpses, or B, they survive and at least you're getting a powerful Rimelocked upgrade. But we'll take a look at it. I think I really like this one in here. I've been liking it so far in the Wild Hunt for very similar reasons. Essentially, like, I'll dangle Legane out and be like, go ahead. I mean, go ahead and kill Legane, you monster. But if you do, then he's got a Rimelocked upgrade underneath him that you don't know what it is yet. Are you going to score me Steaming Corpses? So that's kind of a fun mental game. All right, so let's take a look at the surges not brought. After taking a look at what else we have in here. So Perfect Cut, score this immediately after a friendly fighter's attack action if you rolled 2 or more successes, and 1 or more of those successes was a critical success. So this is pretty great because it doesn't have to be a successful attack. This is probably one of their strongest surges. So as long as you're engaging with the enemy, you have a shot at this, especially if you're engaging with your 3 dice fighters. So you just need to roll 2 successes and 1 of them be a crit. Easier said than done, don't get me wrong. It is a dice-based card, but it kind of reminds me of when I used to run Branching Fate, where if you're throwing enough dice, you're going to get different symbols. If you're throwing, 3 or more dice, you've got a really high chance at those crits. And the fact that it's not looking for a successful attack, the fact that if they end up blocking it, you're still getting rewarded for it. This is pretty bread and butter for them. They are, in my mind, an ABC aggro warband, so always be charging. So are they doing what they should be? Then we're going to go ahead and reward them for that. Now, with pairing them with Rimelocked, we're kind of exploring some different requirements for the warband, which I'm not opposed to, but it does mean that we're not always going to be able to hang out precisely where we want to and make the attacks that we want to. So that might be something that we kind of see pulling against itself here in the objectives. Tenderize the meat. Score this immediately after an activation step if 1 or more friendly fighters made 1 or more successful attack actions, and the attack roll contained no critical successes. So hilarious if you have these both in hand, right? You're scoring one of them, very likely, right? So if successful and they don't block, I guess the only way that you wouldn't score one of these is if they crit defended, you had 2 basic successes, right? And then they crit defended or tied. But I think that these are, again, really good dice-based surges for them. The fact that they're not kill surges, I would bring both of these. And you're going to be frustrated when they don't go off, but this is a very dice-based aggro warband. So keep attacking, keep chopping. Let's see. I did have them both in hand last Thursday and thought it was cheeky hilarious to have protection either way. Hold on, I can't see the rest of that statement. There we go. If you crit succeed, well, you get haunches or death. Yep, exactly. All right, so then the main course. Surge, score this immediately after an activation step if you have 3 or more haunch counters. You want to be working towards 3 haunch counters. This is, hey, are we able to inspire? This is, again, another really good surge for them, I think. These and all 3 of these are totally possible in round 1, and you want that, right? All 3 of these are pulling us directly towards enemy fighters, though. We need to be attacking and interacting with enemy fighters mainly to get haunch counters, so main course, and then both of these need to be attack dice thrown at an enemy fighter. So then here, Icy Grip, score this immediately after an opponent's activation step. I think this is going to be our hardest surge. Holding 2 objectives and 1 or more of those in no one's and or enemy territory. So the nice bit about this, what I like about this, is that if Grisla can't get into the mix because she's so slow, you can park her on an objective in your territory a little closer. Now, I'd love to be able to get Gristla into the mix because she has prime cut and fillet, but it kind of gives her something to do. Like she can move up and get onto an objective, right, for you. And then maybe next round, hopefully now she's within charging range. Whether she's inspired or not, she hangs out at 3. Does anybody get faster when they inspire? They all do, except for her. And Karnskir doesn't need to get faster. Karnskir is already a total beast in that category. So what this is asking is, we've kind of done that setup probably. Like, I don't think you're not really charging into each of these positions. You're lucky to be able to charge into one of these positions. And very likely that's going to be satisfying the second part where you're looking to be in no one's or enemy territory. So you want to jump on that opportunity, but only after you've done the setup for an additional objective. So yeah, if I'm running this, what I'm thinking to myself is, since it's a surge, it could come up at any time. Like I could surge into it from other cards, right? So I've got to think, all right, is somebody in position to help if this comes up? And then have I used Cedric already? Because Cedric's probably going to be what I need to make this work well, because I'll still be able to charge, which is this range 3 attack, and land on an objective. And then hopefully that objective is in no one's or enemy territory. And I've been able to get a little bit more mileage out of that activation, because I've kind of probably already had to sacrifice an activation to just a move. And that's not ideal. So making sure that I can then find an attack to position for Icy Grip, I think is going to be important. And with Gristla having 4 health, I think I'd rather generally like play her forward right out of the gate. Like if you can, get her close to the front of the line and make sure that she is threatening a position minimally, but hopefully 2 positions, so that you can maybe get fillet and prime cut off. I know you get to these, but when considering Icy Grip, latching, awful, cool heads, and get out of my larder all help with the holding through the opponent's activation, theoretically. Okay, perfect. Yeah. So a lot of what I'm saying in advance is kind of just that initial take, because you're super right. We're going to have tools that are going to help with this. So I'm currently speaking with activations in mind, but that's not the full picture. And Oliver is totally right to point that out. We might be able to support this with ploys. So it's less, and actually, so I'm going to stay away from like what could have been brought into the picture yet until we have a view of the full picture. That's definitely the right way to do this. So let's keep going into the objectives, and let's see what we have to complement each piece in here, because that's huge. All right, so let's go down to these 2. Back to the kitchens. Score this in an end phase if you have 2 or more haunch counters and there are 1 or more friendly fighters in your territory. This is great. This is so like you've got 5 fighters. There's a good chance round 1, like, you're going to be leaving somebody behind momentarily. And if it's later, you can always knowing that you have this, bring somebody back over the line. And hopefully you've gained at least 2 haunch counters, regardless of what round we're ending. And then 1 for you and 1 for me. Score this in an end phase if you have 2 or more haunch counters and 2 or more friendly fighters are each adjacent to 1 or more enemy fighters. Okay, yeah. So again, I think 2 is super reasonable. The fact that this is 2 glory payout is really good, and 2 or more friendly fighters are each adjacent to 1 or more enemy fighters. So you can be hugging the same enemy fighter, and you could be adjacent to 2 individual enemy fighters here. So good flexibility in where this can land. And like, let's say they've charged and you've charged into a person, and you don't move that individual. Like, as long as nothing changes with that setup, then you've already got 1 person leading into this position. So that's really good. And something to keep in mind when you're playing against Skinnerkin, if you ever see that, that might be something you want to break up and potentially just like drive back or push one of the fighters out of the way. So in here, let's just review really quickly. So we're holding one objective when a fighter is taken out. I think that's totally fine. Glacial Dominion is... Oh, right. So this is immediately after an opponent's activation step, if you have somebody holding and they have a Rimelocked upgrade, so you've received some form of Seed Glory so that you can get a Rimelocked upgrade out, and then you're holding. So we've got 2 that are going into one fighter holding, 3 looking at holding with Icy Grip, and really only asking us to flex into a second one for a moment. We have our dice-based Seed Glory here with Perfect Cut, Tenderize the Meat, and the Main Course. And then we're looking at position as well as have we killed somebody. And hopefully we're getting there, right? Like we absolutely want to be making meat corpses. So Icebound Defenders, 2 or more objectives. So we're not really stretching ourselves too thin on like any sort of like objective holding requirement. We've still only flexed it up to 2, and only one of those needs to be we only need 1 potentially to satisfy your warband holds each objective in 1 or more territories. This gets harder if you can't kind of guarantee that a territory is only holding 1, because it really pulls your decisions. So you either want 1 in no one's territory or only a single one in your territory, because it's very unlikely that you're going to be able to like only arrange just 1 in their territory. Maybe you do, but actually the more you can flush in there, the easier like Icy Grip is going to get, and the more like landing spots you'll have in their territory while you're in there fighting them, to hopefully sync up these objectives. Wintry Conquest, looking for 3, so that's our biggest hold requirement. Steaming Corpses, just checking, has both sides suffered losses and was one of those Rimelocked at the time. Haunches and Haunches, as well as a little bit of positioning for both, and those are really, really good. So but something like 1 for you, 1 for me might be hard to score when other things are asking you to be on objectives. So like you might have to choose like, oh, am I going to grab my objective scoring right now, which isn't directly next to fighters, or am I going to grab my 1 for you, 1 for me scoring? So something to consider there. So how does the rest of this picture kind of come in? So we have Brittle Reveal. Now this is a tool that allows you to just instantly get one of the really powerful relics, Rimelocked relics, dethawed instantly. Like so on demand dethaw, and the cost here is that it's going to then break at the after the end phase or action phase. Sorry. So it won't be able to contribute to any sort of scoring past that round, and specifically past that action phase, but you'll get the relic quickly. This is a card I actually think I undervalued last week, because if you have any objectives that are looking for the moment a Rimelocked upgrade flipped, Brittle Reveal is an amazing tool to control that moment. We don't actually have any of that in here, so I think Brittle Reveal's main thing it's offering us right now is to just get quicker access to these relics, but then only temporary access. So we're kind of leaning into explosiveness with Brittle Reveal. Cool Heads. Friendly fighters holding objectives cannot be pushed. This effect persists until the end of the next power step. So this is pretty cool because of the fact that it lasts across 2 power steps. So you can play this and know, not only for the rest of the power step I'm playing this in, but through the next power step, they're not going to be able to push. So as Oliver called out in chat, this is something that can help with their holding game plan. So even though they're likely going to take that hit, given their, especially early game, given their defenses, something like Cool Heads played at the right time can just be a scoring card for you, like a huge scoring assistance card, with making sure that you remain on those objectives after you've taken that likely 2 damage hit, and are now vulnerable. So the counterpoint here would be that coming out right now is Rimeworm's bite as well. So we're going to see that in the meta, and that's going to be pretty popular. So a lot of the times, if you take a 2 damage hit on these guys, which is typical, that's your average attack damage that you're going to receive. They could then just get deleted by an incoming ping. And that's always a risk, but it's something to keep in mind, I think, when we're hanging out mostly on 3 health and low defense, right? So we have not much helping us not take the hit, and then once we do take the hit, we could just get pinged away from that position. So I think that's going to be the type of deck that we really struggle against. Creeping Frost, +1 damage to the first attack action made in the next activation step if the attacker has 1 or more face-up Rimelocked upgrades. So +1 damage is like something that we hurt for. Like we're coming in pretty low on the damage category early on. So being able to get any sort of +1 damage source is really cool. So this is another card in our deck that's looking for us to have something or some sort of Rimelocked upgrade, and in this case, one that's already thawed. So this is we'll kind of add this to the stack of things pulling for us to have as many Rimelocked upgrades as possible, and we're at 4 right now. Fractured Steps. Choose a friendly fighter that has 1 or more face-down Rimelocked upgrades and pick one of those cards. Push that fighter 1 hex for each thaw counter on that card. I think this is really great. I got to see this played a little bit this last week, and I think I'm a huge fan of push in general. This is a Seed Glory required push, so we kind of have 2 power cards in here that aren't going to go off until we've seen Seed Glory. Now this one, then you want to time with when something's about to thaw, and this one you have to hold back on until something thaws, and we have the tool to help on demand that. So I'm following along so far. What we got: Frozen Solid. This allows you to Rimelock a upgrade on any fighter. It's not just an enemy fighter. It's probably going to be an enemy fighter, but you could always Rimelock one of your own if you wanted, if that would be of benefit to you. So for example, if you thought oh man, that fighter's absolutely going down in the next activation, there's nothing I can do to prevent that. Okay, maybe Frozen Solid their Rimelocked upgrade real quick so that it helps with Steaming Corpses. It's not a guarantee, but it is a 66% chance to go off, so that's pretty high. I kind of wish if you played this on yourself, it even just it was either automatic or increased the chances, and then the 66 was on if it was an enemy fighter. But this card is pretty great for both trying to control your opponent's upgrades, ooh, that's a really scary upgrade, let's see if we can't disable that, as well as helping you out with Steaming Corpses. Glacial Advance. Choose up to 2 friendly fighters and push each chosen fighter 1 hex. The absolute what is that? Is that Anchorman? The 66% of the time it works every time. Yeah, I hear that joke around here so often. I don't know if it plagues the rest of you, but it makes me smile. But man, do we use that one a lot. Okay, Glacial Advance. Choose up to Anchorman. Okay, perfect. Yeah, so we're pushing 2 fighters, and then we do have to give them either a move token or a charge token. So you're pretty much committing something to these individuals that end up holding these objectives from this push, whether you picked 1 or 2 of them. I think this is really great here. So it's offering us a couple different things. So if we start near an objective, we can get straight onto it, and we can grab that charged status as well, because we're probably not going to need to move that fighter again. And if we hold off, the move is available to you, but if you're able to situate this where it's 2 fighters that are getting pushed into these positions, and one of them maybe only had a move token from earlier so that they could get into that ideal spot, then when they both land on the objectives next to them and they get charge tokens, you've just potentially surprise charged out. Now, the reason I was creating an example where 2 fighters get charged out is because I'm talking kind of round 1. That's the only way you're really going to be able to do it early. You have 5 fighters, unless very specific bodies are dropping on your side. But this could be like charge 1, 2, 3 with your key fighters. They think, oh, they've still got 2 fighters left. They're totally not going to be able to like reactivate these 3 charged fighters. Well, Glacial Advance, like in a very key way, could. But like, you gotta really plan for that. Like, that's got to be something you've had in mind from like setup. You had Glacial Advance in your hand. You had deployed objectives in such a way where you can make this happen, and you go for it, and all of a sudden you're getting some extra mileage out of one of your already charged fighters early. Hopefully one of them with like this guy here, our young Master Kretch, because he's got Prime Cut and Fillet. So that's just cool. That like those types of tricks I love in this game. I love like identifying that they exist, and like when they happen in games, I just like, it's almost like I've already won the game for myself, because I'm just excited that I got to pull off this cool trick and get like extra weird mileage out of something. So but a lot of the times this is just going to be helping get you into position for the objective scoring that Oliver has in here. It could even be like you've been driven off of an objective, because this doesn't care like what your current token state is. It's just after you push them, you have to at least give them a move or a charge token, your choice. So they could already be charged. They could have already been on an objective or right next to an objective and been kicked off or what have you, and get back on. All right, Rays of Dawn. Choose a friendly fighter that has 1 or more face down Rimelocked upgrades and pick one of those cards. Place 1 thaw counter on that card. So this was a card I thought I was going to miss, and I don't. Last week, I was like, how hard am I going to feel like the pinch of Rimelocked Relics, like having to get the Sea Glory, and then having to like help or like wait that time to see them thaw out? I actually found it to be like not too inconvenient. So I think Rays of Dawn does actually too little just in general outside of its rivals deck. The application here is you can get one out faster. You can help with something like Fractured Steps. All of a sudden you have a push of 2 available to you instead of a push of 1. Like, it does have use. I just don't think it goes far enough when you've brought a pairing into the mix as a card slot. So this is like my first candidate for like what I'd recommend on a cut here. And Sudden Thaw domain. Each time a thaw counter would be placed on a face down Rimelock upgrade, place 1 additional thaw counter on that card. This effect persists until the end of the round or until another domain gambit is played. So I think this card goes a little further for you because it can do it to more Rimelocked upgrades, and it's a domain. So if you're up against Daring Delvers, Gore Chosen, or Rimeworm's Bite, man, are there any other places that domains exist? It's at least those 3 spots. Outside of those 3 spots these days, very rare. But if you're up against those, you have some element of domain control, which is really nice to be able to kind of, all of a sudden this piece shifts from something that's bolstering your game plan and becomes a counter game plan piece. And the fact that it can offer you both, I think, helps it vie for a slot in a Rimelock deck. Winterborn Might. Choose a friendly fighter with 1 or more face down Rimelocked upgrades that has 1 or more thaw counters, and pick one of those cards. Remove 1 or more thaw counters from that card. +1 dice to the first attack action made and the next activation step by that fighter for each thaw counter removed in this way. I think this card's phenomenal here. So you're kind of trading the benefits of a Rimelocked upgrade for these dice. But it goes further. I actually think this is really clever. So Steaming Corpses, as much as I've been enjoying it, I think it's really hard to play around or it can be really hard to play around on your side. And as our opponents spend more time with Rimelocked Relics themselves, more time playing against Rimelocked Relics, they can kind of start waiting for targets to have their relics thawed before they take them out. And really, they don't have to wait all too long. Like, it's either 1 or 2 of their turns or 1 or 2 of your turns, typically, like at most. And so what this card does is this card can also slow that, right? So all of a sudden you remove 2, because the most you're removing is 2 here. If it ever hits 3, it dethaws. Dethaws? Thaws. It finishes thawing. But the fact that you can say, I'm going to grab 2 dice and this is going to continue to chill is really cool, because it also then puts more time pressure on that relic working for you towards steaming corpses. And all of a sudden your opponent has to think to themselves, like, if they've been trying to play around steaming corpses, do I continue to wait? Like, or do I just remove this problem because they're continuing to be a problem for me? So also just throwing extra dice in this deck is really good, and like, it's gonna help with perfect cut, it's gonna help with tenderize the meat, like, yeah. So this is probably my favorite card in here for kind of like their normal game plan. Get out of my larder, choose a friendly beast or brawler. The chosen fighter makes 1 move action. There's a brawler? There's 2 brawlers. What? Okay. Those keywords don't come up too much in Nemesis these days. It makes me happy when they do. So we got 2 brawlers. This card is bomb. Wow. Okay, cool. So this definitely helps with your game plan. It makes a lot more sense on Cedric too. The fact that he can move 4 and like count as +1 dice. I was gonna say he counts as support, but it's even better than that. He's counting as a single support and getting you an extra dice. So yeah, that's cool. And if you hold that into like your different scoring positions, see why you called that out. The King hungers, +1 dice to the first range 1 attack action made by a friendly fighter in the next activation, +2 dice instead if you have no haunch counters. I love this card for so many reasons, but it's a lot of the same stuff that we were talking about with Winterborn Might. Like, it's going to help you, like the fact that if you're at the beginning of the game and you don't have haunch counters, it can really accelerate that and help you get haunch counters. I think is really cool, and the fact that it doesn't become like of no value after you've received your first haunch counter, I think is really good. And all your fighters have range 1, so they all benefit from this. Yeah, this helps the most with these 3, as well as, I guess, Forbidden Strike being because this is a kill surge, and things like Align in the Snow. Like, anytime we can stack dice and help make sure that we're getting one of their bodies out, we're helping towards all of these that look for a fighter out of action on their side. Unfit for a King. Pick 1, discard 4 haunch counters. If you do, gain 2 spent glory points, or discard 2 haunch counters. If you do, gain 1 spent glory point. So this is really cool, because at the end of the game, if you've already satisfied all of the things that you need those haunch counters for, and it doesn't even need to be at the end of the game, just, once you've met, like, in here we have Back to the Kitchens, 2 or more, 1 for you, 2 or more, and the main course 3. Once we've satisfied all of those, we're inspired. What else are you going to use those for? And so to be able to turn them into victory points is really, really cool. It does have a weird relationship with your hand, because if you get this early, it's going to pull at you. Like, how many rounds do you carry this card over? And I don't think the answer is like more than a round. I think very often you want to try to like just take what you can get out of this in the round it was played, but only after you've inspired. Hey, Jake. Appreciate you. All right. So then, so let's kind of, I don't want to go too far into what our ploys are doing for this picture without also seeing the rest of the picture. So let's dive into upgrades real quick and kind of talk about what they could be doing in here, and then really bring the picture together now that we are seeing more and more of the pieces come into play. I did specifically include no haunch spenders for this card. Get to 3, hopefully quick, cap at 4, spend this as soon as you can. As you're at 4, because you have no other uses. Yeah, I think I think that was a really smart decision, like to not have other things vying for your haunch counters. So get to 3, get your scoring done with them, and then get Unfit for a King out of your hand for whatever benefit you can grab. And I think sometimes you're going to have a fun push-pull decision where you're like, do I like, I haven't seen Back to the Kitchens and One for You, One for Me yet. So do I spend all 4 right now and hope to get 2 more, or do I play it safe, spend 2, gain 1? And I think that'll be fun for you for sure. So on this side, Chillblade Armor. This fighter's characteristic is 2 and cannot be modified further. This card is so vital for them, just in general. Like, if you can get this on any of these first 3 fighters here, then you're going to help them out even on their inspired side, especially on Grisla. Unless you're up against Cleave, then don't waste it on Glisla until you can take that Cleave target out. But yeah, being able to get these fighters up to 2 will just be immense for their survivability. Frostgale. So one of the things I like about Frostgale here is the fact that it's going to sync up, and this is just kind of like one of the cool purposes that it has in Rimelocked Relics in general, is this is really good at giving you attacks from the spots you need to be for objectives. So you can play from an objective and say, like, until you take me out, I'm going to have an archer hanging out here. But at a minimum, we need 4 Rimelocked upgrades anyways. So this is one, helping towards that count. Gelid Cyclone. So what this says is you're going to react after it flips up, and you get to choose. So when it flips up for the first time, if it was following this fighter's activation, you can do the top or the bottom. Can't do both. But if this flips up at the end of any other activation, so not this fighter's, you can react with this first part, which will allow you to teleport to any empty hex that contains an objective token, and then you give this fighter 1 charge token, whether they have 1 or not already. And then going forward, anytime this fighter activates, you can push this fighter 1 hex after their activation, which is really great. So this also helps with the holding picture that Oliver's been building here, right? Because I can charge somebody who is like within 2 of an objective. I can charge between them and the objective, hit them, and push myself onto the objective. Not only that, but I've also then got that surprise position that could be back in my territory all of a sudden to help me with my scoring purposes. I am ashamed. I don't know why the Arctic Crown isn't in there. Well, because the Arctic Crown is a bit booty, just in general. So I don't blame you. But it is Rimelocked, so it is something that we could consider bringing in. I think we're going to want a 5th Rimelocked item in here with kind of like the ploys that we've situated. But we'll see. So Layfrost Conduit, -1 defense to a minimum of 1 from enemy fighters during this fighter's attack actions. This is awesome for you. So if you're playing ABC aggro and you're just needing attacks to land, like, this is going to help them land. And then it goes further and says, while this fighter is holding an objective, this fighter supports each friendly fighter. I think this card is phenomenal. If you can get this on the fighter that has Frost Scale, there's no reason to move all of a sudden, and you're just reducing their defense as you're firing shots at them because there's no range limitations on this, while also supporting your own fighters. Like you get extreme flexibility with this. You get to decide, do you want this to make all of your other attacks better, or do you want them to make this fighter's attacks better? This is a cool piece in here, and it's easily my favorite of the Rimelocked cards. Raw Power. A lot of these combo really well together. Like, if you're reducing their dice, then Raw Power has a higher chance of going off and dealing damage as well. But this one is restricted to range 1. Thank God. When this fighter makes a range 1 attack action, +1 damage to that attack action if there were no successes in the target's defense roll. This is really swingy and is fantastic when it happens. I was kind of forced into bringing this with the Chillblade Hunt because I didn't feel comfortable with the Rimelocked Relics that I was bringing, or the count of Rimelocked Relics I was bringing, so I had to bring an additional one. Brought this. And so far it hasn't triggered. I've just been happy to have another Rimelocked option available. But I think when this does go off, it's going to be really big, especially when you can combine it with scything. So like I've been trying to put it on skate. Actually, has it gone off? I think it might have gone off in one of my games where I got it on Skaith, and then he went in for a scything attack, and one of the fighters took extra damage. Yes, that did happen. Cedric could benefit in the same way, right? So all of a sudden he can be scything for 3 if your opponent can't get their attacks or their defense dice to cooperate with them, and you can really crank that up with Layfrost Conduit if you combine those two. Now, that's a situation where you're choosing, all right, it's this fighter's attacks that's going to be more accurate instead of everybody else's, is when you combine it with raw power. Rimeworm Skin Boots. You cannot give this to a large fighter or a beast. This fighter cannot be pushed by enemy warbands. So can't be driven back. So this is a really good piece, as we've kind of talked about before, to make sure that these fighters that would normally be very easily moved by the drive back rule aren't. I think you hit it on me, but to be fair, the zombies have 2 HP anyway. Yeah, might have. Oh, poor Wellner. Spoilers for the battle report next week. Skaith helicopters his way through a zombie horde tremendously. It was fantastic. All right, Snowblind Cloak. -1 damage to attack actions that target this fighter while this fighter is holding an objective in no one's or enemy territory to a minimum of 1. So in theory, I like this. However, I think this will be pretty limiting. Like I think, so we've got 12 upgrades right now. We got to find things to cut, right? I think when you draw this, you're going to hope it was most other cards that we've already covered. And then like, who do you give it to? So you can't, so you can't give it to a large fighter. But like whoever you end up giving it to, you're probably going to want them to just sit. And I'm not sure you want these guys to be forced 100% into sitting. Now, if you're putting it on somebody who's doing your conduit, it's going to be harder for them to kill that fighter. But probably you wanted Rimeworm Skin Boots on that fighter first, so that they couldn't get pushed off, so that they can continue to offer that supported position. Yeah, so I don't know. I think this one is good in theory, but probably doesn't find its way too usefully into this deck over other options. Awful Connoisseur. Reaction, use this during a friendly fighter's attack action. After the out of action check, if the target was taken out of action within 4 hexes of this fighter, place this fighter in the hex the target was in when they were taken out of action. Oh my gosh, I think I think a lot of these cards faded from my brain like during that content avalanche, because wow, this is such a cool card. So yeah, get a kill, teleport somebody else in, place this fighter in the hex the target was in when they were taken out of action. That's so gross. That's so gross. But that's awesome, especially if you can combine that with killing somebody who's trying to stay on one of your objectives. They've realized, hey, I gotta put fighters on objectives because I gotta block their scoring. To be able to just turn them into a pile that you can teleport to is pretty funny. I don't think this card is good, but free move onto a fighter holding an objective was the thought from Oliver. I don't know. Like, I think this card's totally fine. The fact that it doesn't give you a move or a charge counter is really strong. And of course, it's her on the art because she's so slow otherwise. So if you can get this early and get a kill and just constantly threaten that anytime you get a kill, she can show up, or whoever your choice is can show up, I don't actually think it's all that bad. I definitely would think it would be something to test and have fun testing. Calloused Hands. -1 damage to a minimum of 1 from attack actions that target this fighter. After this fighter is dealt damage, break this card and gain 1 spent glory point. Um, I, uh, I commented on the podcast that this is like my favorite of their upgrades. I think this one is quite rude, and just all in all really good. Like the fact that you can damage mitigate, or at least threaten damage mitigation. If they find a different way to hurt you, then this will break and give you a glory, and it never ends up giving you the damage mitigation, like if they've hit you with an ability or a gambit sort of a deal. But the fact that this is just another glory point for you and is also able to possibly prevent taking damage is, I think, a must-have with them. I think it's really, really good. Gruesome Gourmand reaction, you like it like raises like the like glory like floor on the deck. Now the thing here is, you know, if you're surgeon, well, you can see all of your objectives, but unless you have draw tech, you're not necessarily seeing all 20 of your gambits and upgrades. So there is a chance that you won't see this, but when it is seen, it's just commonly going to be like you've raised the floor on how much glory you can bring in. All right. We have some commentary in chat I want to catch up on, especially since it's from Oliver, the man himself. Calloused Hands plus Unfit for a King brings the deck up to 20 glory potential without killing. Ultimate goal is to present an aggro warband, and then when I start scoring in my own territory, they have to come jump into the blender, so I don't have to collect them as ingredients. Without killing glory, I still have to kill for objectives. Oh, I see what you're saying. So you're saying, yep. So it puts you at 20, assuming you can get the kills that you need for the objectives. So actually, technically, we can kind of figure that out. So you're looking at, so you need to get a kill here. So that puts you up to 21, right? And then I think you only ever need the 1 kill in theory. 1 or more. 1 or more. Yeah, so if you're scoring your deck, then like all the glory that you can get from your deck, you're actually at 21 because of the 1 kill that you need to make sure that you have in there at some point in time. Yeah, that's a high glory floor. Like before you start bringing in other bounties. That's really cool. So Gruesome Gourmand. Sorry if I started reading this before. Reaction, use this after your power step if you played 1 or more ploys in that power step. Okay. Choose an enemy fighter within 1 hex of this fighter. Deal 1 damage to the chosen fighter. Then you can heal 1 this fighter, then break this card. Really good. It is a 1-time use, which is really healthy because that's a really strong ability. It's fun that that one's in the upgrades area too. Like that's, you could actually put this out and then play a ploy, right? So you can do a 1-2 surprise punch with this. But if you get it early, you can get it out so that it's always threatening that. Latching on. Fighters within 1 hex of this fighter cannot be driven back. And so that would include this fighter. Reaction. After an activation step in which this fighter made a charged super action, give this fighter a guard token. Oh, hoo hoo. All right, so that's really cool. It's also not like not restricted to the non-beasts. Like you can actually give this to Karnskir too. It's better not on Karnskir because the drive back thing, but the fact that he can get on guard would be a reason to consider giving this to him for sure. But I think a lot of the time you'll want this on Cedric or somebody who has Chillblade armor. But it's got good flexibility regardless. And then Head Chef. So here's our last one to kind of bring the picture into focus. Push each other friendly fighter up to 2 hexes, then give this fighter 1 guard token as an action. So because of the game plan we're going for, so actually this is like one of the cards in their deck that I was not so hot on. It's giving 2 pushes, but then it's only like a guard token doesn't go very far. And seeing it in the context of a deck like this, I was too tough on it. Like that, like it makes a lot of sense in the context of a deck like this because of Wintry Conquest, because of Icebound Defenders. Like earlier, before I got the rest of the picture, I was saying Icebound Defenders is probably best scored in no one's territory, and I kind of focused on that a bit. But with the game plan that Oliver's been outlining, where the idea is to all of a sudden take and hold in your own territory, like I like this quite a bit, and the fact that you're getting a guard token is not really helping your defense as much on these three fighters, but it's helping the fact that they cannot be then driven off of that objective. So you mentioned earlier in the stream about Grisla being stuck as slow in my own territory. This gives a useful action and guard, so Grisla can't be pushed back from her own objective. Yeah, absolutely. So let's think a little bit. Do we have like any seed glory problems that we can kind of overcome? I think that might be the first piece of the puzzle we really want to take a peek at. Oliver, would you be okay with me kind of cutting cards, moving cards in here? I suppose we always have the original copy or list. So yeah, let's do that. So I mentioned earlier that I don't think Rays of Dawn is doing enough, so let's cut that. But then over here, so if the mission statement is only going to get you glory in the end phase, so you could have a starved round 1, which is an interesting play style. Because if we're sitting back and hanging out on objectives in our territory, what are we scoring? So we're not scoring any of these three. We're not scoring Icy Grip because it requires one of our fighters to be in their territory or outside of our own territory. But we could try for this. This is probably actually our best Seed Glory out of the 6 because this one requires a Seed Glory already. So where did we get that? And then Frostbite and Strike. An enemy fighter is taken out of action. So these 4, we're not scoring without enemy interaction. This one, we're not scoring without Seed Glory. So Icy Grip ends up being the only surge that can potentially get us glory semi-passively. So let's keep that in mind, and then let's look at the rest. So somebody's got to die before a Line in the Snow comes online, so not that one. Icebound Defenders can be 2 glory. Steaming Corpses, people need to die, and the right people need to die. Wintry Conquest actually requires a Seed Glory as well, and holding 3, so can't be that one. And then these require haunch counters. So the only 2 things that we can score if our opponent doesn't interact with us is Icebound Defenders and potentially Icy Grip. So that could be really tough with this deck. If you're up against an Invasion Warband, perfect. That's where this deck is going to excel. That's where its strength is going to be. But if you're up against a Hold Warband, and those are coming back into vogue because we've got the Gits, we've got the Thorns, we've got Sepulchral Guard, all 3 remade Swarm Warbands that do an amazing job playing the hold passive game plan. So I think in the meta you'll see quite a few of those, and so you're gonna have to abandon your home base being where this game plan is played out, and you're gonna have to invade. And then if you spend some early activations moving on to objectives in your first game, I like to think of decks with like a best of 1 and a best of 3 value. Best of 3 is what I want to build a deck to be able to strive well in, but we can always talk about best of 1 advantage, right? So here, if they don't know what your deck is, your pairing is, because no, they will. Rimelocked has a plot card, so they'll know you're Rimelocked. And so as they see you start moving on to objectives in your territory early on, that might catch them out. But it might not, because somebody who studied this deck might realize, well, wait a minute, hold on. There isn't much that they're going to be able to score in that way. before they get seed glory. So you might make them nervous, and you might be able to kind of pull one out on them by spending turns, kind of like positioning in your own territory. They might think like, oh, there's something he knows that I don't, and they'll come in. But in a best of 3, as soon as you've played that first game, you've lost that like psychological advantage, and so now you have to run into their territory. So I think this deck isn't going to work as well as just kind of like a hold back deck. I actually like this. I think this is really fun. I'm of the mind where like decks aren't inherently like I'm sure there's exceptions to this, but most decks aren't inherently bad. Usually you can find some trick to make a pairing work for you, and I actually really like the flex that's going on here. I'm a huge flex fan as it is, so I wouldn't necessarily say like this pairing is too at odds with itself. I would say that if you want to play hold back, that's at odds with what you've built, because you're going to need to find some seed glory. So you're going to have to be invading it a little bit. So let's just kind of look at some objectives that we could toss in here, specifically surges. So in the Rimelocked category, just alone, is there anything that could help us with seed glory? Deadly Depths Godsworn isn't inherently bad. You heard it here first, folks. All right, eating my words immediately. But like, props to you, whoever you are out there. Wellner. All right, Total Conquest. No, because we got to kill somebody. Shattered Defenses. Attack action was successful, and the attacker is holding an objective in no one's or enemy territory. So Shattered Defenses would pretty much require that we charged with, like, unless we got lucky and we charged next to, or like somebody who had like a starting position or what next to an objective, it would be Cedric that would have to do it. So you're putting a lot on Cedric, making that attack succeed on 2 dodge. So Shattered Defenses would not be good for us, getting a successful attack while holding. Defrosted might be, no, I don't think I'd put Defrosted in here. I like all of the other picks that you put in over Defrosted. Now the one thing is you can score defrost. This is just fun. Did some like rules chatting with some people on Discord, and looked into what people thought about Gelid Cyclone and Defrosted, and the common consensus was yes, those two, like Gelid Cyclone flipping up will then score Defrosted for you, so that's pretty cool. But that's just a combo, and it's not something I would build a deck around holistically. So what else could we take a look at here? So Stolen Warmth, 2 or more enemy fighters are out of action, and 2 or more friendly fighters each have 1 or more face-up Rimelock upgrades. No, not with what we're doing. And Cold Front, your warband holds more objectives than each other warband, and more enemy fighters than friendly fighters have wound counters. I think because of the meta right now, I wouldn't bring this. Like, I like the hold pieces that we've brought, but this would be really difficult in or like against a hold proper game plan. So let's take a look over at the Skinnerkin stuff. All right, so let's start. I want to start back with surges. So attacked flank. 1 or more friendly fighters made 1 or more successful supported attack actions in that activation step, and you gained 1 or more haunch counters in that activation step. So no, because of the support. Now, what's cool about this? So this would be like the cool thing here would be another thing that would require like Seed Glory setup, all that stuff is Lay Frost Conduit. all of a sudden providing you a support would make this really, really easy. Assuming you then get the haunch counter out of it. Oh man, you gotta not only have the support, but you gotta get the haunch counter. This is a hard card. Last minute order: 2 or more friendly fighters each have 1 or more charge tokens, and you have scored 1 or more objectives. Oh, funny. So you've already scored a surge if it's round 1, and then you have charge tokens. So no. And sing while you work. Scores immediately after a friendly fighter's attack action if that was your third or subsequent range 1 or range 2 attack action made by a friendly fighter in the same phase, and each of those attack actions was made in a different activation step. Okay. So no, I don't think that this. So like I really like the surges you've picked so far. I think with this pairing, I'd pick the exact same 6 surges. So I think what we're kind of discovering is just that the game plan is just going to pull us a little bit more out of your territory, at least initially, than that game plan that we were discussing. But let's take a look at the rest of the objectives available to us. Now, if I was doing this in person, I love doing this bit in person. Actually, this is harder doing it here. So when I'm doing deck critique with friends or anybody that asks me, usually it's with a physical deck at our local. So what I get to do in those cases is I actually get to put all 32 cards out on the table, and you start forming like, okay, so this card contributes to this surge or to this objective, and you can group like, okay, so these surges all kind of are trying to accomplish the same thing, so how many cards are supporting that, sort of a deal. And you can start seeing gaps on the table. You can see like, oh, we don't actually have good card support for these cards. Is that okay? Like, do they inherently work with these cards, or do these cards require support because currently we're not giving them different support? Or how many game plans are we going for? Like, as you're kind of categorizing these on the table, you can see like, oh, we have a lot going for the hold game plan, and we only have like 1 aggro card. Can we get rid of that aggro card and lean more into the hold plan, stuff like that. And so doing it here over the deck builder and not being able to, like, I'm very visual, and I think there's a lot of value in being able to visualize 32 cards mapped out on the table and seeing like, oh, you've decided that you have 4 pushes, and the 4 pushes are helping you towards these hold cards, or they're helping you towards these supports required cards. When you can see all of that, you start forming a picture of how much you have working towards each item. And like I said, you can see the gaps, and that helps you determine like, oh, I either need to cut this or I can bring something else in. Now with Nemesis, one of the interesting parts of the Nemesis experiment is, like, when you're deck building for it is what I mean by experiment, there isn't always a right answer for some of these final card slots. Like, there could be 10 or 11 objectives in total between your surges and end phase that work great for the game plan you've developed, and you really want to try this deck. But those 11th and 12th cards are just at odds with it. And so you kind of have to pick like the best of the worst options and see what you can do with this deck. And I really enjoy that as well. And it doesn't necessarily mean that deck is inherently bad. Actually, that Mournfrost deck that I brought to Adepticon in our deck deconstruction 2 weeks ago, we talked about how some of those cards are the best of bad options, but the rest of the deck had such a clear mission that I felt it was worth it. And I had a lot of fun running that deck and a lot of success running that deck. Let's go ahead and take one peek here at the end phases for the Skinnerkin to see what the rest of this picture could potentially look like. So score this in an end phase if you have 2 or more haunch counters and 1 or more enemy fighters are vulnerable. I think this is super hard with the game plan you've been outlining here, even though it is only 2 haunch counters. I think I would prefer like even Wintry Conquest over this with the game plan that you've been outlining, especially with how hard it can be to situate vulnerable. And then do you want a vulnerable fighter? A lot of the times the answer is no. And so like you're risking scoring against keeping that fighter alive and then not winning that dice roll in the next round. So a card like this can be like really good or bad based on like how that dice roll goes in the next round, because all of a sudden that person you left vulnerable could really punish you for that decision. Plated Banquet. Score this in an end phase if you have 5 or more haunch counters and each surviving friendly fighter has 1 or more upgrades. Although I think this is totally doable, I think that this with Unfit for a King is like a good choice to not have both. So something you could do is, let's say after testing this deck, I wouldn't change this now, but after testing this deck, if you find Wintry Conquest to be just super difficult, right? Because I think one of the hardest bits about this is just simply going to be having 3 fighters alive when you want to score it. And if that continues to be the case, maybe entertain Plated Banquet coming in and Unfit for a King coming out. Plenty to choose from. Score this in an end phase if there is no more than 1 surviving enemy fighter. This is like extremely difficult. If you've been watching What the Next with any regularity, you've probably heard me dunk on cards like this quite a bit, and it's just because it changes so much from matchup to matchup that this could just straight be a dead card, or this could be the easiest card in the world. So especially with how popular Resurrection is right now, I would leave this at home. And then Slaughterhouse. Score this in an end phase if you have more haunch counters than there are surviving enemy fighters. So that's interesting, but again, variable, right? I think right now this is going to be really fun to test in its current form from an objective standpoint. If I were looking for objectives to kind of swap into the game plan, I could start entertaining Slaughterhouse. But again, first, I think I'd entertain Plated Banquet. Yeah, absolutely. But I did not think that my first time taking a look at Skinnerkin was going to be for a Flex build. Like, this is, thank you for this. I enjoy Flex so much, and getting some time on Rimelocked Relics recently. I am a huge fan of that deck, or of this deck, or this pairing. So let's see. So we've decided that the game plan is sound based on the pairing, right? So our kind of the best pieces here to support this game plan, and since we're at 11 and 12 right now in our power categories, what do we cut? And what other Rimelocked upgrades do we have available? Let's start there, because some of these ploys are really going to need us to have... What? Oh, right. And it's going to do all of them because they're all from that release. Same thing happened last time. Frost Gale, Gelid Cyclone, Lay Frost, Conduit, got them all. Polar Connection. Forgot about this one. And then the Arctic Crown. So if we had to fit a 5th one in here, would we fit Arctic Crown or Polar Connection? +1 dice and innate support result to this fighter's range 1 or range 2 attack actions while this fighter is holding an objective. I think it makes total sense that we don't have this in here, because I think most of our range 1 and range 2 attacks are not going to be coming from objectives. They're going to be we're going to be making them and then finding our way onto an objective through a reaction or through a ploy, if we're making range 1 or range 2 attacks. I could see trying this out. What this could offer you is if Cool Heads, or you've got a couple different things in here that essentially don't allow your fighters to be moved, like Latching On or the Rhymeworn Skin Boots. These cards can help crank up the value of bringing and trying Polar Connection, because essentially you're threatening being on an objective. Somebody takes exception to that, comes up and tries to remove you, doesn't succeed, and then you just go, my turn, right? And the innate support here is less what this is going to be offering you. It's going to be offering you the +1 dice, but then if you have somebody who's already received the conduit, they could be supporting you from afar, and all of a sudden, both pieces of this are working for you. So I think that situation is more likely to benefit you if I had to pick one of these to bring than Arctic Crown. Use this after an activation step if this fighter is holding an objective in enemy territory. Inspire this fighter. Man, I forgot that this was any fighter when I called it booty earlier. I thought this was the leader only. So it's actually a little less booty. And you do have tools to be in these positions. Use this after an activation step if this fighter... the bummer is the fact that it has to be after this particular fighter's activation is when they'd gain this benefit. Yeah, no, I don't think this works really well here, because for the same reason I was mentioning, like a lot of the times you're not actually charging onto objectives. You're going to be like near them and then using abilities and stuff to get into place, assuming you're charging. So and that's all going to be happening in like reaction or power steps. So you don't want to block this reaction, and then the power step isn't where this is going to benefit you either. So I think if I was bringing one, it'd be Polar Connection. So let's just add that for now. Defrosted has the same problem as needing a Seed Glory for Seed Glory. Could see it swap for the other. Yeah, so what's nice about this one though is like your Rimelocked upgrade can be in any state. So as long as an opponent can't move one of your fighters somewhere that is holding and has a Rimelocked upgrade on it, this will score for you. So I think I'd stick with Glacial Dominion over Defrosted, 100%. So I've cranked up the numbers of upgrades we have, which is a problem here. We'll have to reduce that. So let's do, for sure, let's get rid of Snowblind Cloak. Like, I just don't think this is doing enough for the slot, as we kind of highlighted in there. Like, Chillblade Armor is fantastic. It's going to help with your survivability, and you really need to survive to get to Wintry Conquest. Like, I think this card is almost like your stretch goal card. I could see this card commonly not getting scored in your games and putting you at, what did we talk about before, 21, so putting you at like an 18 ceiling, and then this is like the game plan went amazing, here's a 20, here's some extra glory to make it happen. If you can score it earlier, that would be really, really good. Was thinking Gruesome is probably another cut. I think you might have said that earlier too, from Oliver. Gruesome Gourmand. I actually really like this one. So because it can, well, okay, I guess if we think about the math a little bit, the fact that you're on 3 health may be what makes this one a cut, because generally you're taking 2 damage at any given chunk, right? So 2 and 2 being 4 is going to take you out regardless if you healed 1 along the way. So yeah, I hadn't mentioned cutting it before, but I think that would be worth a cut. Yeah, and it is only that one-time use. And we do want more Rimelocked in here if we can. So totally follow what you're saying. So you could test here, right? Like, but the Deck Doctor is going to make sure we get this to 10, 10, and 12. So if you'd like, feel free to test from here, but let's see what we would cut. And I think what we'll do too is we won't look too much into what could have been in here, because I think unless we strip too much out, if we say, hey, these aren't playing with the game plan, but just because we're already pressing up against 130, normally, like if this was in person, we would explore what different cards that weren't brought could do for you. I really like to look at the rest of the picture, right? Like what wasn't brought. As we looked at the objectives that wasn't brought, which is the most important like review, when considering your game plan here is like, is this as sound of a game plan together as possible? I've already put my stamp down. I think this is with this pairing. So you definitely want to do that. But when we were doing that experiment here, or exercise here, that there wasn't any changes made. So we're going to give Oliver the benefit of the doubt and say that the gambits and upgrades that he chose are all good in that slot. And that's not to say that after Oliver tests with this sum, and maybe you, dear viewer, test with this sum, you find different suggestions to make. Let us know. We're both on the Mortal Realms Discord. And so I'd love to hear it. I'd love to hear it down in the comments below. I'll pass them along to Oliver. If there's anything that you think could make this sing from the power deck that we didn't include, let us know. So just looking at what we want to cut and what things are doing for us. Let's see. So I like Cool Heads. We're going to keep that. I think it works really well with your game plan. And also, your kind is pictured in the card, so you gotta at least test with it. Creeping Frost, we've already talked about being really good once you get the Rimelocked upgrades flipped over. So this is going to be some more forward momentum for the rest of the game instead of like the early game. Fractured Steps is great. Frozen Solid. So this is helping with. I like to draw the direct correlations, right? So as mentioned before, this is helping with Steaming Corpses from an objective offering, but it does more for you than that. Glacial Advance, our push 2 onto objectives. That's what Fracturing Steps is helping us with mostly as well. That's all great. Sudden Thaw is helping us kind of get to those Rimelocked relics a little faster, also allowing us that domain counterplay. This isn't directly giving us too much to our objectives. So if you do find that gem that could go into the power deck, this would be a spot to strongly consider switching out. Because like right now, the biggest thing this is doing for us is allowing us to get to the +1 damage on Creeping Frost a little faster. It's actually hurting Steaming Corpses because it makes us go through our thawing process faster. So there's less opportunity for our opponent to take down one of our currently Rimelocked relic fighters. Oh, and you know what? We could, the objectives are already, or the upgrades are already pretty slammed in here. A card that didn't make it into my deck, but I still want to test with at some point in time. There's an upgrade that after a ranged 1 attack, I think, range 1 or 2, maybe, you can... Here, it's got to be down here. You can Frostbite. Yeah, after range 1 attack damage, dealt damage to target, you can Rimelock one of their upgrades, and it doesn't even matter if the fighter's been taken out of action. Like, you still get to turn it face down. So this card would directly support Steaming Corpses. Now, it doesn't need to make it in here this time, but as you test, keep that in mind. If you're finding Steaming Corpses to be really hard, think about introducing Frostbite in, because a lot of the times you're hitting. Like if you've got really accurate attacks, you're just not dealing damage. Does this have to kill? Which is fighters dealt damage to the target pit. Yeah, so you only need to deal damage to get Frostbite down, and then you can follow that up with another attack, maybe in the next activation, take them down before it flips over, stuff like that. So that's a option for our upgrade slot eventually, but only after testing. We don't fit that in now. We don't have the room for it now, and we want to see how this works. Frozen Solid, Glacial Advance. So Winterbone Might we love, and this is going to push us to really make sure that we have that fifth one, like the different things that we have in here. Let's make sure that we have 5 total Rimelocked upgrades. Bleak Outlook is cheeky good with Tenderize the Meat Skinnerkin. Missed that originally. Well, now I gotta look this up. All right, Bleak Outlook. So this must be... Rolls of crits are considered to be successes, not critical successes, in attack and defense rolls in the next activation step. Correct. Now, this is one of those that I don't think we're gonna have room for, though. Like it does help with that. That is really cheeky. But it is only an activation step, so it only has the potential to help you in that one swing. And I think our power deck is doing much more for us than potentially helping us in that cheeky way for only one activation. King Hungers we're not getting rid of. Get Out of My Larder we're not getting rid of. Unfit for King we're not getting rid of. So my recommendation would be to hit Brittle Reveal here. It's not doing all too much for us. It is helping us get a relic out quickly, but we don't have any scoring that is demanded by that. And I think as you play, you'll find that they come out at a decent enough pace, especially since this costs losing it at the end of the round. And these are so powerful, you probably want to hold on to them more than a round if you can. So that would be my cut from our gambits. Then in here, so it's got to be one of these four, because we want to keep the 5. And you know, so like maybe that's something you discover in testing is, you know what, like you always had enough. That either means A, we nailed it and we had all 5 like working towards our needs, or we overtuned it and you really only need 4. But I would stick with 5 if you could with this game plan, I think. So then that means we've got Chillblain Armor and Rime Skin Boots. I think these are both excellent in this flex build and with our purposes. So those aren't going away. So we got to pick one of our infactions to be gone. Head Chef. Head Chef is actually like up for cutting here, because the biggest thing it's helping with is Wintry Conquest, and that is a good big thing to be helping with. So it's not totally gone, but outside of that, I think you're going to be able to find like Icebound Defenders on your own, and I think you're going to be able to find like Icy Grip, like especially since you need a Seed Glory before you get to Head Chef. Like you're going to find Icy Grip without this card, so it's mostly helping for Wintry Conquest. But you don't have to end on objectives. Actually, it's also helping for Back to the Kitchens, or One for You, One for Me. Like these are helping with your positional scoring aspects of these cards as well. Okay, let's keep Head Chef. I like it. Head Chef gets to stay. Latching On can't be driven back. And after a charge, give this fighter a guard token. So again, this could go. Oh, you know what's interesting? Fighters. So enemy fighters can't be driven back as well. So Latching On could do you a disservice when you're charging a fighter. You're not going to be able to move that fighter with anybody that you charge with Latching On. That makes sense. That's why the charge gives you a guard token. Is they're like, hey, you're not going to be able to move the enemy, so we're going to try to help you out, because they're going to have a support. Goodbye, Latching On, Oliver says. All right, I agree. And these both I really liked. So there we go. Final task is going to be a good name. Does anybody have any name recommendations for Oliver? I was thinking about this a little bit before the episode, and I was trying to lean into like the pairing in like a chef sort of way, and I was thinking like you do something like thawed fresh gourmet, or something like that. And then I was like fresh and flesh. I like alliteration and rhyming and all that, so it was like fresh thawed. The polar bear. Okay, explain yourself. Oliver. Well, I mean, it's coming from Oliver the man himself. I'm not going to tell you how to name your deck. If you want to name it the Polar Bear, then this deck is called the Polar Bear. All right. Well, the Bear, the show on FX. Oh, right. I haven't checked that out yet. And then is an Arctic animal. The Polar Bear. The Polar Bear's Feast? No, like, all right. Save. Oh, actually, we want to save that as Oliver. Yeah, okay, cool. So it's about chefs. Got it. The Polar Bear. Saved. All right. And then so how we're going to handle this deck list, if you'd like to try it out, is it will be added to Battle Mallet as well. Every deck list on this show will always be added to the Battle Mallet Nemesis library. In this case, I'm going to make sure that there's a call out in there specifically that this was a list sent by Oliver. So not 100% sure what that will look like in language, but a call out, shout out will be there. So anytime we do a deck doctor segment, I'll make sure that you get a shout out, credit for bringing the list forward to the show. So thank you, Oliver, for sending this over and helping me do my first deck doctor with it, for showing up as well. It was really cool to be able to have you to bounce off of. And I think that would be something that I would like anytime I could, anytime I'm doing a deck doctor, being able to bounce it off of the person I'm reviewing the deck for is really, really cool. And here you kind of describe your thoughts as you were working on it. So we got to close this show down today. And so with that, next week is going to be a week A show. Again, with that cadence, we're going week A to week B. This was week B, which is our experimental slot. Currently, we've tried deck deconstruction and deck doctor on that experimental slot. Please let me know what you've thought of either of those formats. I'd love to try them out a little bit more, but if people like them, then maybe they'll be mainstays in that experimental B slot there. And you can let me know in the comments below. Or on Discord. Next week's week A, we'll start with a battle report for the Chillblain Hunt. Looking forward to that. And will be a new build with a pairing I have not yet chosen. I would like that pairing to include one element minimally from the barrage of 10 new decks that we've received, 7 warbands and 3 of the Universal Rivals decks. So if you're feeling particularly inclined to have me do a build, please let me know. You can choose both parts of the build, or you can choose just one part that you really want to see. All right, well, from there, in the meantime, between now and when I see you next, I'll be giving the Chillblain Hunt a little bit more of a go. Really, really excited to be doing that, with it being my first warband ever, seeing some fresh new life injected into it with the Rimelocked Relics pairing. I'll be doing that at my local meetup and letting you know at the top of next show how that goes. You can see the deck we built today, as mentioned, on Battle Mallet's Nemesis library. You can best, as well as many more decks, all of the decks from What the Decks is there, and from so many great deck creators. Like, just reach out to the Battle Mallet if you would ever have any interest on having your deck featured in their library. They'd love to hear from you. They are great guys. You can best reach me in the comments below or on the Mortal Realms Discord. You can check out all the Mortal Realms Network has to offer, including a link to our Discord at themortalrealms.com. Thank you for watching. Hope to see you next week. I've been Skylar, and this has been What the Deck.